This is
Gentleman yields back, and at this time, the time has expired, and so I will therefore recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. Reverend Schenck, I've been in Congress now for 16 years, and never have I witnessed the kind of savage attack that has been levied against you today. I've never seen that or heard that happen.
Gentleman yield.
Before. No, I won't. I'd like to know, sir, do you have any response to anything that Attorney Pauletta said about you?
Yes, a couple of things. One is, I think he alluded to finding that I had made untruthful statements under oath, something like that. In those days, I was a street activist. And these were, there were a number of criminal proceedings. At that time, we felt we were not, those of us who were activists were not obligated to incriminate ourselves. It was up to others to prove their accusations against us. I will say that, you know, activists, like politicians, become hyperbolic. We use inflammatory language for effect. At this season of my life, when the most important things to me are the love of my family, the hugs of my new grandchild, and really, you know, probably the last third of my professional career and maybe life. What matters to me is telling the truth, is speaking candidly. And that's what I've come here to do.
Let me, and thank you for that, and let me just say that having looked through your background, having seen that you were born to a father who was Jewish, a mother who was Catholic, she converted to Judaism, but then as you got older, you converted to Christianity, took flack for it from the family, which was later, they embraced you. But you are a man who has stood on principle, even though I've disagreed with many of the positions that you've taken over the years. But I don't think it can be said that you are a gentleman who lacks principle and character and does what you believe and is truthful and honest. So I want to thank you for being here today. I want to ask you, what was the relationship between the Supreme Court Historical Society and your efforts with influencing justices at the Supreme Court, or at least bolstering them in their thinking?
Mr. Chairman, in 1999, my organization acquired a piece of property across the street from the Supreme Court, which we thought would give us advantage in accessing the court, and it did. And at that time, I discovered the existence of the Supreme Court Historical Society, and in particular that it sponsored an annual dinner inside the court hosted by the Chief Justice, often attended by most of the other associate justices, and that one could join this society and enjoy access to those events, which I did. I joined the society, and it became an entry point for our work.
And you actually had donors to raise money for the Supreme Court Historical Society, is that correct?
Yes, I encouraged our people to contribute generously.
Do you have any idea how much money you were able to raise for the Supreme Court Historical Society and what that money may have been used for?
I never actually added it up, but it was considerable. It was certainly...
Over $1 million?
It could have been.
Professor Fredrickson, can you tell me how my bill, the Supreme Court Ethics, Recusal, and Transparency Act, would potentially prevent or at least root out influence campaigns like the one that Reverend Schenck has described?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for your very fine work on this legislation. You know, a couple of obvious ways. The disclosure standards for gifts, travel, and income would go to the private dinners and the travel that was described by Reverend Schenck. A mandatory recusal with a policing mechanism, you know, for the court itself to review recusal motions. I think those things would go very much, both to potentially the reality of conflicts of interest, but certainly the perception that so many people have that there are ethics problems on the Supreme Court.
Thank you. My time has expired. I now recognize